right. So I am going to talk a little bit about what you need to do from the very beginning. So one of the things that the first thing you need to do is you have to ask somebody to be your treasurer. That person is going to take care of your money. They're going to take your checks and they are going to deposit those checks. You may also have somebody who acts as a secretary. Maybe that person takes the checks. It really depends. But you as a candidate or you as the campaign manager, you want to get that check out of your hands as soon as possible. So the first thing you need to do, once you have a treasurer, that treasurer needs to open up a bank account for you. That bank account can be real simple, but it does need, help. It does need to be, you do need to open that up in order to start filing your campaign reports and all of that or the other stuff. So generally speaking, there is a fee for a smaller checking account, but you can look to see if your financial institution has a fee-free checking account, because you're not going to keep it open. After all of this is said and done, even if you're planning on, when you win and you're planning on running again, you may still very want to close the account. If you've not got a whole lot of money in it, you can put that money in other places. Not your own account, but you can definitely move it to a party campaign. You can give it to another candidate. You can do a number of different things. So once you've got your bank account open, you can then register your campaign. Now you can register your campaign, you have to register your campaign at different levels. So I'm not going to specifically talk about getting that to happen, but in the links that we'll be sending you, there will be different places that you can see. If you're filing at the national level, at the state level, at your county level, at your municipal level, there's different places and different kinds of paperwork that you need to file. And it all needs to be filed on a schedule, and it's different for every state, and it's prescribed. So all of those sorts of links will be available to you in the packets that we give you.
Is there a fee to file?
It depends. Generally not, but some places there are fees to file. But not in Wisconsin. Once you've registered your campaign, you can start gathering signatures in the allotted period of time. There's a start date and an end date for when you need to gather your signatures. And depending on what office it is, you may need to get as little as 200 signatures. In the state of Wisconsin, there's some offices where you need to get 2,000 signatures. And if you're running a campaign by yourself, sometimes it's kind of hard to get those signatures because they must be within the district that you are running in. For a statewide office, it's pretty easy because you got statewide signatures. But in District 6 in Madison, you have to have all of those signatures within that district. You also need to make sure that all of those signatures, there's only one signature. Don't let people sign twice. If you've got people who are doing these for you, make sure that they ask, have you signed the papers? And always, always get the maximum number if you can, because you only need so many signatures to get on the ballot. However, we have seen over and over again, even in when we're trying to get something on the ballot, if it's not a person, you may be trying to get an issue on the ballot. And in Racine, we had enough signatures to get the marijuana on the ballot, but the clerk threw out how many? It was a lot. Threw out a lot of signatures, which if you were to look at them, you know, I can read that, but it's their prerogative, and they will do that, particularly if they can use that sort of thing to change the outcome. So again, once you start getting money in, you need to file campaign finance reports. It's just like if somebody were a staff to a nonprofit or staff to a corporation. Every month, generally speaking, you have to report out how much money you received in and how much money you spent out. There are campaign limits. That changes quite a bit, and with Citizens United, it gets a little complicated about who can do what. Corporations can do a heck of a lot more about spending money on campaigns than people can, which is kind of weird because it was essentially to say that unions and corporations are people, but they actually have more rights than we have now. So you have to kind of take a look at that. There's also limitations on how much cash, how much, who can write a check. There's just all of these little things. You can't take more than $20 that's not attributable to somebody. So it's much better to take checks. But if you've got an event and people are throwing a whole bunch of money into a bucket, you can just say, we had this event, we don't know where all of this money came from, but there were 30 people at the event and we got this many dollars. But if they do give you, if one person gives you any more than $20, they really do have to write a check. So you got to watch that, and people at the front collecting the money for you need to be very careful about how that comes in. There are rules, and where are those rules? At the state level, they're here at this URL. County level and the local level, they change around, but most of the times you're going to get that at your clerk's office. But we will provide a full set of links to where you can get things at each state level, for each state offices, and then for the counties in Wisconsin. We can also provide some broader links for the area as well. So one of the things that Damien talked about was creating your campaign plan, your strategic plan, so to speak. Getting your project all ready and knowing what you are going to need to fund. People will talk about a calendar later on. People will talk about how much communication you're going to be doing, whether that's going to be on the internet, whether that's going to be dropped by volunteers, or whether you're going to mail it. All of these things are going to get into how it is that you're going to create your budget. Here are some ideas about some of the expenses. Maybe you won't have to do a website twice. I don't know why I get website twice up there. But maybe you do. Website and Facebook, that probably was what I was thinking. But you are going to have some online presence. If you're a larger campaign, a statewide campaign, you may very well want to go ahead and get a P.O. box and not have all of those checks coming to your treasurer or to your own house, which some local offices do. They just don't rent a box and then the checks come to themselves. Again, a larger campaign, you may want to get a dedicated phone line, whether that be a booth or office. Maybe you have people on salary, but all of these things are going to be predicated on what your plan is. So your sources of funding are going to primarily be your friends and family to start out with. They're going to seed your campaign. And so it's very important for you to make sure that when that your treasurer knows to account for those things very carefully, because you don't want anything to look amiss. Like, you know, here all of a sudden here's $2,000 from my family. You know, you need to break it down and be careful about how you do that. You're going to get online donations. Those will be pretty easy. They'll go into the spreadsheet. But basically, you want to make sure that everything is done in a timely manner. You can't let checks sit. You can't let the online donations languish. You're going to also get direct, you're going to be talking to people and they're going to hand you checks. Don't let those slide in between your walk lists and then never get deposited. And then at the events, again, accounting needs to happen because there's very specific ways that the treasurer is going to have to report those out. This is more for later on. But here is talking about your campaign statement and how that's going to apply to how the funds get raised. And I'm going to talk about this later on as well. But your fundraising plan needs to incorporate all of the things that you think you're going to pay for, you know you're going to pay for, so that you can start telling people, I am going to need this much money to get to the end of this day. And there are going to end up being extra asks, because sometimes you may end up needing to do an extra piece of lit that you didn't think you were going to have to do as a response piece to an attack or other things like that. Maybe something very urgent has occurred in the community that you need to get some word out and say, this is how I stand on that separates me from the crowd. All right, so here, when you're creating the budget, you want to ensure that the standard practices are done. So that's one of the reasons you want to, if you're not getting an actual accountant to be your named treasurer, that you at least have somebody who can review the documents before they go to the state so that you can make sure that it's accurate. We have templates for budgets. We have a link to where you actually have to file these papers, how they need to be signed off on, and when they need to get into the offices. And that's really pretty much it about handling the money. It comes out, it comes in, it goes to the bank, your treasurer reports it, both as it comes in and then as it goes out. I have set some time for some questions on this because it doesn't really, that money management piece is really kind of simple, but it's also very, very important that it's done exactly how the state wants it to be done, because they can toss some nasty things your way if it doesn't happen exactly how they prescribe it to be. So that's one of the reasons you want to look at the elections website, you want to look at the ethics websites for your state, for your municipality, because the laws change all the time. You can't go back to the last campaign that you just did. You need to look at those things every single time. The forms change, and so that's very important to make sure that you're on top of that. So I will take just a few questions right now. I'm hoping I'm getting us back a little bit on track, because the bigger piece is how do you get that money in? But this is also extremely, extremely important. Yes?
Can you say what the standard chart accounts are?
Can you repeat the question?
What are the standard So that,
I will. So using a standard chart of accounts, basically you're saying you have income and expenses, and in that income you'll have merchandising maybe, you'll have donations, you need to say who it's coming from. There are, and then on the other side for the expenses, you will want to say, I'm buying t-shirts to sell, I have lit to print, I have a printer to pay, I have a postage to pay. You know, so when you look at a standard chart of accounts, it can get very, very long. But there are some free tools that you can use that you can populate. QuickBooks actually has a free product that you can use. There are other free products out there. You can go to the internet and find those yourself. But in the template that we've got for budgeting and for tracking the money that's coming in, it does have some standard account lines that you would want to use. Anything else? Yes, check those links. Make sure that you are in compliance with your state. I can't say that enough. Make sure you are in compliance with your state. And yes, you definitely want somebody to look over those accounts. If you're training somebody, find a friend who is an accountant just to make sure that it's working out properly.
When I ran for city council, I remember that there was a minimum or a maximum in terms of filing a finance report. There was basically a minimum amount that you had to actually have, and if you didn't make that, you didn't have to file anything. Is that stayed the same? Is that still true?
It is. The numbers change from year to year what that minimum amount is. But when you move over, I mean, you do still have to close out your accounts. You have to report all of the monies you come in and how much money is spent out. But it does change. It changes, and it's not always consistent, so you always need to look. Damien?
Is there any advantage when you're collecting signatures to collect email addresses, or what should I be doing with those email addresses when I'm collecting them?
So the question is, can you collect email addresses when you are collecting signatures? Yes, you can. You can modify the form ever so slightly that the state provides a template for to gather signatures. And that way you then have contact information. You want to put that in your database of the people who at least have said, well, you're important enough that I want you on the ballot, because they can't sign somebody else's papers. So they've signed your papers, they want you on the ballot for whatever reason. Hopefully they are a friend and an ally, and then you can invite them to be part of your team. All right, I'm going to step away because there's much more about money, but that piece that I wanted to leave you with is check the website, make sure you're in compliance.